I just wanted to see what was left over from my lunch. I just wanted to see if there was maybe a zinger or a cuckoo or a Google or a Razzie, or even just maybe a plain old Dolly Madison cupcake. But doesn't look that way. All there is an orange. Kind of disappointing. But you know what's really disappointing? Having to carry your lunch in this drab bag, when we could be carrying our lunches in these great lunch boxes. In the earlier eras, decades ago, that's when lunch boxes were really great. They had great graphics, great characters. What I'm really talking about is character licensing on lunch boxes. And that all started with Mickey Mouse back in 1935. But aside from the occasional character after that, it really didn't take off until two major companies, Thermos and Aladdin, and each of those companies vied with each other, competitors as they were, for the licenses of the best characters around. The character licensing craze really started with Hopalong Cassidy, a TV star, a movie star originally, but he was very popular on TV. And the Lunchbox Company really took off with that character, and that was the beginning. The floodgates were opened. The first one I'd like to talk about is from the Thermos Company, and this dome, as it was called, as opposed to the more traditional square lunchbox, this dome lunchbox has some great scenes from space because it's a tie-in with the famous TV series Lost in Space. That show premiered in 1965, and this was released in 1967, a year before the show actually went off the air in 1968. But it has some great graphics, and interestingly enough, when we see the characters on the back, you can kind of tell that this is Guy Williams and Bill Mumy and Angela Cartwright. But they usually are either too small or have their backs to the camera, as it were. So it looks like they were really avoiding using likenesses, and it seems like maybe they couldn't get the license to show the live action actors, or maybe just didn't want to pay the royalties or whatever. Now, as you've probably guessed, because this is in shrink wrap, I can't open this up to see if there's a cupcake in here, because this is actually a reproduction. I just got it because I thought it was very cool, and I didn't have the original, and it's just a favorite of mine. Aside from Lost in Space, many TV shows were featured on lunchboxes, either by the Thermos Company or the Aladdin Company, whoever got the license for the individual shows. So there was everything from The Muppet Show, The Dukes of Hazzard, The Wild Wild West, The Man from U.N.C.L.E., Julia even, The Waltons. Many TV shows were featured on lunchboxes, just like Lost in Space. One of the most famous, of course, was Batman. Batman and Robin, as it says, and this came out in 1966, concurrent with the smash hit Batman TV series on ABC. What can you say about it? It's just something that every fan of the Batman TV series has to have. Mine is not in very good shape because, for one thing, when you get a Batman lunchbox from 1966 and it's in great condition, it's very expensive. These go for a lot of money, hundreds of dollars. This particular one is not in very good shape, and also does not have the thermos that comes with it. We'll show you a picture of the thermos so you can see how cool it is, but the graphics on the thermos, as usual, matched the graphics on the lunchbox itself. Really fun graphics, the bat signal, Batman and Robin taking out some bad guys. There's art on the sides, of course. We have the, I think it's the Joker and the Riddler. Here's a scene from the Batcave. And then on the other side, what I was calling the back, but maybe it's the front. We have Batman and Robin heroically rescuing this little child from this fire. Not something you would see them do very often, frankly. Their adventures were much more grand and wild than that usually, but it's good for a lunchbox. If you look closely at this lunchbox that I own, someone has rubbed out Robin's face and also the child's. It looks like they were rubbed out with a coin or something. Actually, I don't know if that's true. It might have just worn off because this is quite worn, and I guess was really loved. There was a lot of dents. There were, of course, other superheroes, Superman, Super Friends, the Marvel superheroes. All of those were featured on lunchboxes. But this is certainly one of the most sought after because of the great popularity of both Batman and then the Batman TV series. So there we have it, without the thermos. Now, of course, since Mickey Mouse started the whole thing back in 1935, the Disney characters were a big part of the lunchbox line. It was Aladdin that had the Disney license, and they had all kinds of characters and Disney properties featured on lunchboxes. For example, Disneyland and Walt Disney World. There were also movies such as Mary Poppins, The Jungle Book, Robin Hood. There was the Mickey Mouse Club, Ludwig von Drake, one of my favorites, and many others. So the Disney lunchbox that I have is one of my favorites, Bedknobs and Broomsticks, and it's a really fun, unique lunchbox. And it was released in 1971, concurrent with the film being released in fall of 1971. It has a great, colorful graphics based on the film, of course. Here's the animated soccer game. We have some great art on the sides, as always. I hope you can see this, but we'll show you some pictures. And again, my own lunchbox here is not in the greatest of shape. There's some wear and tear. Of course, you can find these pristine on, say, eBay or other places online. And it just has great art and is really fun. The feature of having the art embossed or raised was introduced in 1961. You can see that here on the Bedknobs and Broomsticks one. You can also see it on the Batman lunchbox. This is all raised, and it does give this cool little effect. And the cool thing for me is that unlike other examples I have of lunchboxes, I also have the thermos for the Bedknobs and Broomsticks one. They always had the art, which was always very beautifully done. As you can see, the art on the thermos bottle was always matching the art on the lunchbox itself. And interestingly enough, it was the thermos company, obviously. They invented the thermos bottle, something that would keep hot liquids hot, cold cold, and be kind of vacuum sealed. But of course, Aladdin copied them. Unfortunately for thermos, the thermos name became so associated with the thermos bottle that, like other names like escalator and cellophane that started out as brand names, it came to refer to the object or the product itself. So they kind of lost their the significance of their trademark. Everybody that made these thermos bottles just called them thermoses, and certainly the public did. Aladdin tried to get around it by calling theirs thermo bottles today, and you've already heard me do it several times right now. When we say thermos, we mean this type of container that is usually in a lunchbox. So there you go. So I do have another Disney one to show you. It's right here. This is one you may have seen. This is again one of the dome so-called lunchboxes as opposed to the more traditional square ones. And this is the very famous Walt Disney school bus that was issued in 1961. So it's really fun. And it was very popular, which is why I say you might have seen it. You might have one of your own, because these sold in the millions. And the whole idea is that the kids are all on the school bus. Goofy is the driver. And it has either child or childlike characters on the school bus, because who would be going to school? We have here Alice, Pinocchio, Dumbo, Morty, and Ferdy. And on this side, here's Mickey and Pluto, kind of seeing the kids off, because Morty and Ferdy are on this side. Then on the other side, we have Dopey, Thumper, Huey, Dewey, and Louie, and Donald is on this side because those are, of course, his nephews, and he's seeing them off, and he's saying, "Hey, I think you forgot your books." And, of course, here is Bambi, because Mickey had Pluto, so Donald has to have some kind of animal. Bambi is carrying the very lunchbox that we're looking at, which is always kind of cool. It's great. You can see the back of the school bus. It has the famous warning, unlawful to pass when loading or unloading, emergency door, except this says open for lunch only, which is a great, really cute little detail. And we also see that on this side, for some reason, Jiminy Cricket is kind of guiding things along in the door of the bus. And he's way out of scale, but it's still fun to have. He's kind of an educational character, which I guess is why they included him. And of course, Pinocchio's on that side, right over here. So they wanted Jiminy to be seeing Pinocchio off. So it's really a great design. We can even look at the bottom and see the undercarriage of the school bus. That's the extent they went to with this great design and idea for a lunchbox. Again, the thermos had graphics that matched the graphics of the school bus lunchbox itself. So it's interesting what makes things difficult and maybe even more fun for collectors who want this particular school bus lunchbox and the thermos is that many thermos bottles over the years were produced. So I always had kind of the same idea and the same sort of graphics, but they were changed over the years because when this was released in the early 60s, it was only the beginning. This was manufactured right up into the 80s. So it sold, as I mentioned earlier, it sold by the millions. And in fact, you are looking at right here the #1 best-selling lunchbox of all time. So considering that Mickey is the one that started it all, it's kind of fun that a Disney lunchbox featuring Mickey is the best-selling of all time. So I hope you've enjoyed this fun little look at a few lunchboxes. They are really colorful and interesting. Well, there's lots of lunchbox collectors, but it's really fun for anybody to look at a few examples. And perhaps it's a subject we'll revisit again in a future video. But for now, I'll just invite you to our next video, where our special guest will be Raoul Feldheiser, and he will be playing a medley of toothsome favorites on the mammoth tooth organ. You won't want to miss it. See you then.